So the workout, it's actually a 2 hour long workout. It consists of a couple of intervals with a nice little fast pedal in between them. So this is Jason's screen. Let me go over about with what you're seeing. So on the right side, this is Jason's Zwift screen. On the left, we are just warming up. And I will toggle back and forth between my screen and Jason's screen just to kind of see where we are at. Since we have two different FTPs, you'll see that Jason's screen, his target watts are higher than my target watts. The workout, going back to that, the first interval is a 5 by 5, so 5 minutes at a harder effort. Jason's is 160 watts, and then 5 minutes down to 145 watts. And with me, my target watts are 145 watts for 5 minutes and then down to 130 watts for another 5 minutes. And we do this 3 times. After that, we get a 3-minute recovery, and then we get 1 minute. I call it fast pedal. So we're at the one setting, damper setting here, pedaling at 165 watts, so which probably gets us around 90 or above RPMs. And then we get a nice 1 minute recovery from that, and then back to the intervals, same intervals as the first. 3 minutes recovery, 1 minute of fast pedal, and then a 1 minute recovery, and then 5 minutes at 145 watts and 5 minutes at 130 watts. Jason is here. He's going to help sort of commentate on a few of the things that you'll see on the screen.
Hi everyone. This was a tough workout. Long and pretty intense for the 2 hour duration. Most of it consisted of intervals. So yeah, tough workout, especially on these first set of intervals. That third block where there's 4 of them. I think, at least personally, I started really feeling it on that one.
Yeah, and some of you may wonder, so this is 2 hours long. Actually, it's over 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. Some of you may have a hard time doing indoor training for 2 hours. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how to do a 2 hour indoor training without getting bored from it.
Yeah, I definitely think either doing intervals or just mixing up the cadence or resistance so that you're not doing the same amount of watts or same RPMs for the entire duration of a long workout. It's definitely more fun and passes the time by faster if you mix things up.
Yeah, doing intervals definitely helps to pass the time, especially when you have to pay attention to what your target watts are. So it's really nice to be able to getting your mind off of, okay, so this is a painful ride, this is very long. So one of the things, this is one of those rides where we switch it up a little bit, doing intervals, and really the time flies when you're doing intervals.
Yeah, I think on this workout, the first at least hour of it, first half of the workout, went by really fast. I mean, I felt like I was only there for a half hour and it was already over an hour that passed.
So I guess if you were to think about how you're going to do an indoor training just in zone 2, that might be a little hard to do. I only do recovery rides for 30 minutes on the weekdays, sometimes on the weekends, but when I want to do a long ride like this, I really do.
Today we did a pretty long one.
Yeah, we did about 2 hours also today, and we mixed it up with intervals and a 30-minute free ride in between, and then another set of intervals after that. So you get kind of your endurance miles and your zone 2 rides in between these harder efforts. I'm not sure if I could ever do a zone 2 ride for 2 hours. I know some people, they listen to music, which is a possibility, or watch YouTube. That's another way to help the time go by fast. But for now, we've just been doing these intervals.
Yeah, it's easy to do a zone 2 ride if you're outdoors. So, I mean, because it's just the surroundings are changing and it's more scenic and more interesting, more entertaining, more stimulus around you. Our outdoor rides typically last somewhere between 2 and 3 hours, and I would say most of it is actually zone 2 riding with a few high intensity climbs mixed in there. But I would say the majority of our outdoor rides are just endurance zone 2 work.
Brings us to talking about how what the benefits are of indoor training versus outdoor training, and its drawbacks. And so I always talk about, this is the second ride that you guys have seen. My first video on Zwift was me doing the ramp test. And if you follow me on Strava or Jason on Strava, we've been doing a lot of indoor rides lately. So we'll talk about the benefits and the drawbacks of those two.
Well, for starters, I think the benefit for us, well, it's been somewhat out of, I wouldn't say necessity, but just preference that we live in Connecticut and it's very cold right now. It's usually in the 20s in the morning when we would normally be starting an outdoor ride. So the cold, and we did attempt to do one ride outdoors that was in those temperatures, and it just wasn't enjoyable. So we've sort of accepted the fact that we're probably going to have to do a lot of indoor riding for the next few months, because it's just going to get colder in December through probably February. So yeah, number one reason for training indoors is so you can just be a little bit more comfortable and loose, and you're not freezing. As far as the training effect of it, I would say, especially in our case, we're using stationary bikes. I feel like it's a good way to work your leg muscles. You definitely get the feeling that you get on your leg muscles using the Concept 2 bike erg is pretty, I would say it's pretty similar to the way it feels when you're actually riding a road bike outdoors. That you can't really work on indoors is technical skills like changing gears and turning, going uphill, downhill. It doesn't feel, you can jack the resistance up to make it feel, to challenge your muscles as if you were climbing, but it's still, your body's still at a different angle and it just doesn't quite feel the same. In my case, I'm a beginner cyclist and my technical skills are pretty poor right now, as far as I'm getting better at knowing when to change gears and clipping in and out of the pedals and things like that, but my balance is still pretty bad, and so that's something that I'm not able to work on indoors. So that's a drawback.
Yeah, and because we're using the bike ergs, there is no way for us to shift gears the way we normally would do on a road bike. And so we have those damper settings, and you'll see us once in a while, we will reach down to change the damper. And so that's really the only gearing that we have. And so it doesn't really mimic the real world experience that you would have otherwise on the road. And so let me just go backtrack to the benefit for me is one of the things that we normally do. We can't ride out from our home because there's just too much traffic around here. So what we would do is drive out to about 20 minutes into our starting point. And so I guess that's that's one of the, not only, but one of the benefits about indoor training is you don't have the fuss of or you just have more of a convenience. You don't need to drive out to your location to start riding. And by the time we start riding, it's really like an hour and a half or 2 hours before we really go out there. And so there's this process when you go out to ride, the process of making sure that you have everything, that you don't forget your shoes, you don't forget your helmet. There's a lot of stuff that we've been carrying when we do our rides. We have the power banks for our phone, make sure that we have that. And I have forgotten it twice already. So that's, that could be a problem. so we don't have to fuss with things. Like sometimes we'll have an issue with our bike rack, trying to install that in the car. And so that's a fuss. And the other time, Jason experienced a flat tire before our ride. And so that kind of held us back a little bit before we started riding. So really, it's the great thing about indoor training is that you have the convenience of just getting up, doing your warm up, and then riding on, for us, riding on Zwift. Another thing is that, we could really stop to, if we wanted to use the bathroom, we can stop to use the bathroom. I always have an issue with using the bathroom when we're riding because as a female, it's really hard to find spots that's a little bit more secluded away from away from cars or pedestrians that are on the road. So I typically have to hold it in, whereas in indoor training, I can just stop and then use the bathroom and then start up again. Another thing is indoor training, you can really work on your fitness levels, right? And your ability to see gains in your fitness. When you're outdoor riding, you're kind of faced with traffic, you're faced with the stoplights and the stop signs, and you want to be as safe as possible. Well, at least for me, at least for us, we try to be as safe as possible when we're riding out in the roads, especially when we have traffic. So you can really work on your fitness on indoor training as opposed to being outdoors. My personal drawback that which I agree with Jason on, is that you really can't work on those technical skills that you would need to work on outdoors. Outdoor riding, there's a lot more of the different variables that can come along your way that you have to face with, one of them being traffic, and you don't really get to work on those skills when you're riding indoors. I know that we also come across intersections, and so when to clip off of our pedals, those skills that you would face if you were doing like a Grand Fondo or something. I mean, I know they sometimes close off certain roads and there's better support, but you would still need to work on skills like avoiding potholes or things like how to deal with the mental stress of if you get a flat tire on the road, how to deal with that kind of stress, which you don't have that kind of stress when you're riding indoors. With indoor training, it really eliminates a lot of the variables that you would otherwise come across when you're outside. Other things that it does eliminate is the wind. Wind can actually play a factor in your overall performance, whether or not you're riding on a headwind or a tailwind. And so you don't really need to contend with that stuff when you're riding indoors. Another thing is temperature. Temperature, I know we've ridden in very cold temperatures. And so we haven't really ridden, we kind of have had when we went to Utah, rode in hot temperatures. But temperature can play a factor. If you are doing like a race outside, obviously it's going to be an outdoor race. Temperature can affect your overall performance.
Yeah, just one last point that I didn't think of before, but since Joy mentioned fitness as one of the benefits of indoor training, I just want to add to that one thing that you obviously don't get when you're indoors are the downhills. But I think that actually makes the indoor training a little harder from a fitness standpoint, that you never, if you just keep pedaling, I suppose you could always put the resistance down really low and just be spinning, but you're pretty much always moving when you're indoors unless you just decide to just stop pedaling, which you could do. But when we train indoors, we generally just keep moving. And so that's a little different than being outdoors, where when you're going down a hill, you're just sort of coasting. And don't get me wrong, going downhill is a good technical skill to develop, but in our case, since we're not racing, it doesn't actually improve your fitness to be coasting downhill. Obviously, it's just a technical skill that you need to know how to navigate those hills, just so that for safety reasons, or then if you are racing, then you would want to know how to get down the hill as fast as possible. So that's something that's, again, a technical skill that's missing from indoor training, but it's because of the fact that you can't do it, it actually makes the fitness aspect a little bit more challenging in that regard.
So let's just quickly go to the screen and kind of talk a little bit about how we're feeling on these intervals.
Okay, so I think we're still on, I think, the second block of these 5-minute intervals. I don't think we're feeling too gassed at this point, but it's these were definitely challenging intervals. Yeah, so you're going a full 30 minutes without really getting a recovery ride in there. It's either endurance or I guess you would say more of a tempo pace, alternating between those two.
Yeah, no, when flipping back to my screen here, I was feeling good this first interval. I really was able to hold the power for 5 minutes for each of those intervals. I think we had it in the 5 damper setting. So you could see my cadence is lower, but my watts is higher. And that's because of that. So the resistance was like in the middle for this set. So yeah, no, I was able to, I was feeling good. The only downside about this ride is we didn't get our heart rate monitors yet. And so we were just going off. I think I was using my watch as the heart rate. It has a heart rate monitor setting, so I was looking at that just to monitor and making sure that my heart rate didn't spike. It actually was you could tell this was a fairly challenging ride in the end, because my heart rate, I believe, I'm not sure, I think my average heart rate was around 155. So that's a little high, but this was like Jason said, was a challenging ride.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like we said, these interval blocks here are each 30 minutes, and we have two of them with 3 intervals, and then one with 4. So that's over 90 minutes. That's 100 minutes of of interval work there. So it's a good amount of time that you don't get a whole lot of rest.
So I guess this is good time to talk about injury or injury prevention.
So Joy has probably mentioned in previous videos, but I'm sort of rehabbing from a knee injury that I developed. Well, I'm not sure exactly when the genesis of it was, but the symptoms started earlier this year, around I would say March or so. It was toward the end of maybe February. It was toward the end of the winter, and the condition I have had and hopefully don't have anymore is called osteochondritis, and I won't get into too much detail on it. You can Google it if you're interested in knowing more about it. But basically, it's a bone injury, and I had surgery on it at the end of July. And as any of you who have had a bone injury or surgery on a bone probably know, it takes a long time to heal. And I was on crutches for 6 weeks following the surgery, and coming off crutches, it was a challenge just to learn how to walk again. And honestly, right now, several months after the surgery, so it's early December right now, so I'm several months after the surgery and into my rehab, but it's it's still not feeling, really not anywhere near 100%. There's some things I still can't do, like running. The doctor said not to run or anything high impact, running, jumping. He did give me the blessing to ride the bike, which is actually part of the reason that I started increasing the amount of cycling that I had been doing. I hadn't been doing much of it, honestly. I probably had only gone for maybe 2 or 3 rides per year with Joy. She was doing a little bit more of it, but I was really happy just to be able to be able to cycle, because that meant that I could do some workouts with Joy. We used to go running together sometimes, but that was sort of short-lived because of my injury. It made me really happy just to be able to spend that time with Joy doing something that we both like to do. And but yeah, regarding injury, so I'm still dealing with recovering from mine. It If everything goes well, it should be fully healed in January. At that point, I'm going to be getting another MRI to confirm that. But in the time being, cycling is my main form of, definitely my number one exercise for cardio, and it's my primary leg exercise. And but the on a day-to-day basis, I feel sometimes different from day to day. Some days are better than others. Some days I feel like I'm making good progress on my recovery. Then other days it feels like I'm taking a step backward. So I have to just be careful about my training volume right now, and just trying to listen to my body. And this was really the first major injury that I've had, so I don't have a whole lot of knowledge or advice for avoiding injury, unfortunately, because this is kind of the first time that I've dealt with it. I might have some better thoughts on the whole thing when I'm fully recovered. I might be able to give some words of advice or encouragement on the whole process, but I'm still sort of in the middle of it right now. So I feel like I'm still sort of learning as I go along. But I know Joy has, and she can talk about her experience, but I know she's had a few, I don't know if you would call them minor injuries or kind of niggles along the way, either with running or cycling that she's dealt with. And so far, I think she's been able to overcome them or figure out how to avoid different pains or injuries that she had. So
When I was running, the first time I started running, I was really excited about it. It made me really feel good. Fitness was not in my background, and so I never really tried to do anything that challenged my cardiovascular system. And so when I started running, I got really excited that, okay, these are my paces, and I was going faster. But I didn't know anything about proper form. I didn't know anything about proper warm-ups. And so I started to feel pain in my knees. And I thought, oh, this is exactly what people had warned me about, was that you're going to have knee problems. In the end, I haven't been running for a while now because I took up cycling. That background in running has kind of spilled over into my cycling. The knowledge of proper form and also proper warm-up has kind of spilled over. And so I'm always cognizant of saddle height and how I am holding up my body or how my foot lands on a downstroke. So I really try hard to be aware of my biomechanics. Doing proper warm-up is one of the important things that you can do, especially when you're doing long rides like this. I know when I used to run longer distance, there needs to be proper warm-up. Otherwise, you could really injure yourself. And it's not just focusing on during the rides or during your runs. It's also what you do after. I know now, at least for my experience with running, I wasn't very careful in the beginning, and so I wasn't really taking proper care of recovery. Having learned from this knee pain, which didn't really turn into an injury, but I was kind of I was taking care of it. I definitely think that it could have been prevented, but that was just a typical beginner mistake when you get into something. And so, uh, proper recovery is now one of our big things that we focus on after long rides or after a harder effort. Definitely keeping track of our sleep is one of the key things that we monitor on a daily basis to see how long we're asleep for.
Yeah. Prior to my injury, I've been working out for a long time, but it was primarily strength training and running, and most of my running consisted of sprinting or shorter distances. I would typically strength train with relatively heavy weights for me for 3 days a week, and um, do sprinting type of workouts 2 days a week.
So, strength training, injury prevention, I think that's also important. And anyone who goes into any sport or any type of, it doesn't have to be endurance training, it doesn't have to be a runner or a cyclist, it could be anyone. Strength training, I think, is also just as important. And I've been trying to incorporate strength training in my sessions. So now I do once a week of strength training. In the past couple of weeks, I was doing focusing leg workouts. Recently, last week, I was doing core. So leg strength and core strength are one of the two things that you are working on as a cyclist. And so I've been doing a lot of those types of strength training in my regimen.
Yeah, I've been working out for a long time, but I honestly never paid enough attention to proper recovery prior to my injury. I was pretty much a workout junkie. I mean, in order to fit workouts in before work, I would get up at 3 in the morning and do 2 hour long workouts, and then I don't think I was getting 8 hours of sleep most of the time before those workout days. So I definitely wasn't recovering enough, and that could have been the reason that I ended up getting injured. Going forward, I think I've learned a lesson that it definitely doesn't hurt to get proper recovery. It can only help you. Try to get as much sleep as possible, and warming up properly before the exercise, I think, is also important, especially as you start getting a little older. That's another point I wanted to hit. That so I'm currently 37 years old, and I've noticed, which is not old. I still feel pretty young overall, but I definitely feel a difference between 37 and when I was in my early 30s. The amount of time that I feel like I need to, especially working out in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, I usually feel a little stiff, and then so I start off by doing foam rolling to loosen the muscles up, and then do some mobility exercises that are targeted toward the muscles that I'm going to be using for the workout. One thing that I've done recently, pretty much after I got injured and learned my lesson, was to spend a little bit less time on the actual workout and shift that time to the warm up. So I spend a little longer time warming up, but my actual workout is not quite as long as it used to be. And hopefully this works out for me. It's since I'm not fully recovered from the surgery, it's I don't really have an apples to apples comparison between the before and after. Hopefully going forward, I'll be able to prevent other injuries from occurring by by following those guidelines of proper warm up and most importantly, proper sleep. I think sleep is big, and I've definitely been getting a lot more sleep than I used to, and overall I feel better for it.
Yeah, if you guys want to know what you would do to or how you would monitor your sleep is we wear watches called Garmin Vivo Active. And so any watch can do this. I think the Apple Watch can do it, and I don't know what other brands there are out there, but they do monitor sleep. And so if you are interested in trying to figure out or trying to monitor how much sleep you get per day, they are fairly accurate, I think. It tells you your deep sleep or your REM sleep, tells you when you wake up. Sometimes there's some little glitches here and there, but for the most part, it detects your movements and how often you are awake in the evening. So I highly recommend getting a smart watch that can monitor your sleep.
Yeah, and another type of technology that helps you sort of plan your recovery is if you use Zwift, or if you're a cyclist and you use Zwift, and well, if you're a runner and use Zwift for that, I'm sure it has the same type of feature. But one thing that I really like about Zwift is that uh, it gives you an analysis of your workout, and one of the things that it measures is your relative intensity for that workout and training load. And I really like looking at the training load because it tells you roughly how much recovery time you need to be fully recovered after that workout.
I think you're talking about Strava, not Zwift.
Uh, yeah, sorry, Strava.
So you can link your Zwift account to Strava, which can analyze training load and relative intensity.
Yeah, yeah. But the point being is, so Strava, the training load will tell you, you need based on this workout, you need up to 24 hours to be fully recovered. So personally, I really like knowing that because I used to always kind of operate in the dark because I never used any of this technology. So I had, a set schedule that I'm going to work out these days of the week, no matter what. Even if I wasn't feeling great one day, I would still do the workout because it was penciled in on the calendar. But now I generally still follow a workout schedule, but I'll adjust the types of exercises that I'm doing, or the intensity, based on how much recovery time I think I need. So, for example, if we do a long, hard ride Sunday, and Strava tells me that I need 24 hours of recovery from that, then what I'll do is I'll take Monday off, and then on Tuesday, if I work my legs on Tuesday, I'll try to keep it, fairly low volume. But if the workout that we just did says you can recover in less than 24 hours, then you can probably work your legs the next day.
I hope you guys enjoy watching this workout. You can definitely do, if you don't have Zwift, I highly recommend you get one. We're not paid by Zwift or by Concept 2 to say any of this about their products, but we really have been enjoying these indoor training rides. So I hope you guys hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll definitely put out another video coming soon. Thanks for watching.